when the peaceful cry for war, the emergency signal tore through the fabric of space at impossible speeds, carrying with it the weight of desperation and the echo of dying worlds. In the pristine halls of the Zephyrian Coalition's capital ship, Harmony's voice ambassador Zarathi stood before the galactic communication array with trembling appendages. Her crystalline skin, normally a beautiful shade of azure, had turned pale with fear and exhaustion. The Zephyrians were a species that had achieved interstellar travel through cooperation rather than conquest. Their technology grew from thousands of years of peaceful development, their ships designed for exploration and diplomacy rather than warfare. They had never needed weapons more powerful than those required to clear space debris from their travel routes. "Send the transmission on all frequencies," Zarathi commanded, her melodic voice cracking with emotion. Every peaceful species in the galaxy must hear this plea. The holographic display before her showed the devastation spreading across Zephyrian space. World after world fell to the advancing Krull Empire, their beautiful cities reduced to smoldering ruins, their populations either enslaved or worse. The Krull moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path and leaving nothing but destruction behind. On the main screen, the image switched to show the Krull fleet approaching the final ring of Zephyrian worlds. Massive warships, dark and angular, bristled with weapons designed for one purpose: total annihilation. These were not ships built for exploration or trade. They were instruments of war, crafted by a species that knew only conquest. "This is Zarathi, of the Zephyrian Coalition, speaking for all peaceful species under attack by the Krull Empire," she began, her words being broadcast across thousands of star systems. "We have tried diplomacy, we have offered tribute, we have surrendered entire systems to appease their hunger. Nothing stops their advance." Her image flickered across communication networks throughout the galaxy, reaching species that had lived in peace for millennia. The Elkari, with their gentle philosophy and advanced meditation techniques. The Vortani, master engineers who built beautiful cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants. The Melody, whose entire culture was based around harmony and music. All of them had the same reaction: horror followed by helplessness. "The Galactic Council of Peaceful Worlds has debated for months while our worlds burn," Zarathi continued, her grief evident. "Our combined fleets, built for exploration and research, cannot stand against their war machines. We lack not just the weapons but the very concept of how to wage war effectively." Light years away, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives from 200 peaceful species gathered in emergency session. The chamber itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with environmental systems that could accommodate dozens of different atmospheric requirements simultaneously. It was a symbol of what the galaxy's peaceful species could accomplish together, but cooperation meant little against annihilation. Council Speaker Veltar, an elderly member of the Mindari species, stood at the center of the chamber. His forearms gestured helplessly as he addressed the assembly. "We have exhausted every diplomatic option. The Krull do not negotiate, they do not accept surrender, they simply consume." Representative Quindal of the Elkari raised a crystalline hand. "What of our combined fleets? Surely our technological advantages are meaningless," interrupted Admiral Zekron of the Vortani Military Command. "I have studied the Krull tactics. They do not rely on superior technology. They rely on superior aggression and weapons designed specifically for destruction. Our ships were never meant for warfare." The chamber fell silent as the truth settled over them. The galaxy's peaceful species had achieved wonders through cooperation and technological advancement. But they had also become soft. They had forgotten that the universe could be a hostile place, that not all species chose the path of peace. "There must be something," whispered Representative Linara of the Melody. "Some species we have not contacted, some alliance we have not considered." Speaker Veltar's expression grew grave. "There is one possibility. The quarantine files contain records of species deemed too dangerous for contact, species that evolved on what our scientists classify as death worlds, Planet so hostile that survival requires constant conflict. A murmur of unease rippled through the chamber. The quarantine files were ancient, dating back to the early days of galactic exploration when the peaceful ships had first encountered evidence of worlds where life had taken a decidedly different path. "You cannot be serious," said Admiral Zekron. "The Death World species were quarantined for good reason. They are violent, unpredictable, dangerous. They are what we need," Beltar replied quietly. "The Crawl understand only strength. Perhaps it takes a species born in conflict to defeat them." The debate that followed was unlike any in the Council's history. For the first time, the galaxy's most peaceful species were discussing the deliberate act of making contact with potentially hostile aliens, not for exploration or diplomacy, but for war. Meanwhile, in a small solar system on the far edge of the galaxy, humanity continued its daily existence, unaware that they were about to become the subject of intense galactic debate. Earth Station Luna, humanity's most advanced deep space monitoring facility, maintained its regular watch over the solar system's edge, looking for asteroids, monitoring space weather, and occasionally picking up strange signals from the void. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in her office aboard the station, reviewing routine reports when Lieutenant Commander Jackson burst through her door without knocking. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately," he said, his face pale with excitement and fear. "We're receiving a transmission on frequencies we've never seen before. It's definitely not human." Sarah felt her heart skip. As Earth's chief xenobiologist and the person designated to handle first contact protocols, she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. But now that it was here, she felt completely unprepared. In the station's main communications center, technicians worked frantically to clean up the signal. The transmission was complex, layered with multiple data streams and broadcast on quantum frequencies that human technology was only beginning to understand. "We're getting visual now," reported Chief Technician Morrison. The main screen flickered, then resolved into an image that made everyone in the room gasp. Zarathi's face appeared before them, her crystalline features unlike anything from Earth's evolution. When she spoke, the station's experimental translation program worked to convert her words into English. "This message is intended for any species capable of warfare," Zarathi said, her desperation clear even across the language barrier. "The Crawl Empire advances through our space, destroying everything in their path. We are peaceful people. We do not know how to fight a war. We need help." The transmission included data packets containing star charts, tactical information about the Crawl forces, and most importantly, proof that Earth was not alone in the universe. As the translation program improved its accuracy, more of Zarathi's message became clear. "We know of your world, distant humans. Our long-range sensors have detected your civilization and classified your planet as a death world, a place where life must fight constantly to survive. We have avoided contact because we feared your violent nature. Now we desperately need what we once feared." Sarah stared at the screen in shock. Not only were there aliens, but they had been watching humanity for years. They had classified Earth as too dangerous for contact, and now they were asking for help specifically because of that danger. Within hours, the transmission had been relayed to Earth's governments. Emergency sessions convened in capitals around the world as humanity grappled with the reality of alien contact and the immediate request for military assistance. In the Pentagon, Admiral Marcus Rivera stood before the Joint Chiefs of Staff, studying the tactical information the aliens had provided. A career military officer with 30 years of experience, Rivera had commanded everything from submarine fleets to orbital defense platforms. He was Earth's most experienced deep space commander, though until today, that experience had been limited to patrols within the solar system. "The situation is clear," Rivera addressed the assembly. "These Zephyrians and their allies are peaceful species under attack by what appears to be a galactic empire built entirely around conquest. They're asking for our help because we're apparently the only species in this region of space with any real military capability." Secretary of Defense Williams leaned forward. And their assessment of our capabilities? Rivera pulled up a comparison chart. Based on their data, our technology is roughly equivalent to theirs in most areas, but our ships are designed very differently. Where theirs are built for exploration and efficiency, ours are built with conflict in mind. Even our civilian vessels have defensive capabilities that their military ships lack. President Martinez joined the briefing via secure video link. Admiral, what's your assessment? Can we actually help them? Rivera was quiet for a long moment. Madam President, according to their intelligence, the Krawl rely on overwhelming force and predictable tactics. They're used to fighting species that have no real military tradition. Humans, on the other hand, have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We understand strategy, tactics, and the psychology of conflict in ways these peaceful species never could. You're saying we might actually have an advantage? I'm saying we have something neither side in this conflict possesses: the experience of surviving on a world that wants to kill us, and the military knowledge that comes from thousands of years of human warfare. The debate that followed would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Some argued for caution, for staying hidden, and avoiding involvement in an alien war. Others pointed out that if the Krawl were truly as destructive as described, they would eventually reach Earth anyway. In the end, it was a simple moral argument that decided the matter. The aliens were peaceful people under attack by ruthless conquerors. They had asked for help, and humanity had the power to provide it. President Martinez made the final decision. We answer the call. Admiral Rivera, prepare the fleet. Within days, Earth's most advanced warships began preparing for humanity's first interstellar conflict. The Deep Space Fleet, originally designed to defend Earth from potential asteroid impacts and other space hazards, was quickly reconfigured for warfare. Ships that had never expected to fire their weapons in anger began loading munitions and checking combat systems. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, the fleet's flagship. A veteran of Earth's orbital defense forces, she had never imagined commanding a starship in an alien war. But as she watched her crew prepare their vessel for the journey ahead, she felt a familiar determination settling over her. Captain, reported her navigation officer, we've received the alien navigation data. The Zephyrian homeworld is approximately 47 light-years from Earth. With their provided FTL technology upgrades, we can make the journey in 12 days. Elena nodded. 47 light-years to save a species they had never met, to fight an enemy they had never seen, in a war that would determine humanity's place in a galaxy they were only just discovering. All ships report ready for departure, Captain, announced her communications officer. Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that when she saw them again, everything would be different. Humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage, not as explorers or diplomats, but as warriors answering a desperate plea for help. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships prepare for jump. Today we find out what happens when Earth goes to war. As the human fleet engaged their newly installed alien FTL drives and disappeared into the void, heading toward a distant war that would test everything humanity thought it knew about itself, the galaxy held its breath. The Death Worlders were coming, and nothing would ever be the same. When hell comes to help, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zephyr system, and immediately every sensor aboard every ship began screaming warnings. The space around Zephyr Prime, the crystalline homeworld of the Zephyrian Coalition, was filled with debris from destroyed vessels and the massive angular forms of Krawl warships. Admiral Rivera stood on the bridge of the Determination, studying the tactical display with the cold calculation of someone who had spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of scenario. The situation was worse than the aliens had described. The Krawl hadn't just invaded, they had turned the entire system into a killing field. Tactical report, Rivera ordered. Lieutenant Commander Park, the fleet's senior tactical officer, highlighted key elements on the main display. Sir, we're detecting approximately 200 Krawl vessels of various sizes. Their main battle group is positioned in orbit around Zephyr Prime, with smaller patrol groups controlling the outer planets. They've established what appears to be a complete blockade. Captain Vasquez joined Rivera at the tactical station. What about Zephyrian forces? Minimal, sir. We're reading maybe 30 surviving ships, all clustered in a defensive formation. Around one of the planet's moons, they're completely outgunned. Rivera nodded grimly. The Zephyrian coalition's surviving fleet was trapped, unable to break through the crawl blockade but unwilling to abandon their homeworld. It was exactly the kind of hopeless situation that would have led to immediate surrender among most peaceful species. But humans had never been most species. Communications. Open a channel to the Zephyrian fleet, Rivera commanded. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the bridge of a Zephyrian vessel. Zarathi appeared, her crystalline features showing exhaustion and despair, but also a flicker of hope when she saw the human faces before her. Admiral Rivera, she said, her voice conveying both relief and disbelief. You came. We did not dare hope that a species would travel so far to aid strangers. Ambassador Zarathi, Rivera replied formally. The United Earth Space Command has answered your call for assistance. We're here to help end this conflict. Behind Zarathi, other Zephyrian officers gathered, their expressions showing amazement as they observed the human crew. To them, the humans looked incredibly robust, their movements quick and decisive in a way that spoke of predators rather than prey. These were clearly beings evolved from a world where hesitation meant death. Admiral, Zarathi continued, we are grateful. Beyond words, but I must warn you, the Crawl fleet is massive. Our combined forces number only 68 vessels against their 200. They have been fighting wars of conquest for centuries while we are scholars and artists. Rivera's expression didn't change. Ambassador, how many wars has your species fought? Zarathi looked confused. Wars? None. The Zephyrian coalition has existed in peace for over 3,000 years. Earth has had continuous warfare for its entire recorded history. Rivera replied matter-of-factly. We've fought wars on land, sea, air, and space. We've developed tactics and strategies that these Crawl have never encountered. The question isn't whether we can win with inferior numbers. It's whether they can adapt fast enough to survive what we're about to do to them. On the bridge of the Crawl flagship Devastator, General Thokmar studied reports of the new arrivals with growing interest. The Crawl were a species that had evolved on a harsh world, but unlike Earth, their world had bred them for brute strength and aggression rather than intelligence and adaptability. They won battles through overwhelming force and intimidation, crushing opposition before it could organize. These new ships do not match any known Confederation design, reported his tactical officer. They appear crude, built more like fortresses than exploration vessels. Thokmar's scarred features twisted into what might have been a smile. The Crawl general was massive even by his species standards, with thick armor plating naturally grown into his skin and eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. He had conquered 17 star systems, each victory adding to his reputation and his collection of defeated enemies' bones. Send them the standard demand, Thokmar growled. They will surrender or be destroyed like all the others. The transmission that reached the human fleet was brief and brutal. Thokmar's image filled the screen, his intimidating presence designed to strike fear into his enemies. Unknown vessels, he snarled. You will depart this system immediately, or share the fate of those who defied the Crawl Empire. We give you one standard time unit to comply. The bridge of the Determination was quiet for a moment after the transmission ended. Then Captain Vasquez spoke up. Admiral, should we respond? Rivera considered for a moment, then turned to his communications officer. Open a channel. Let's introduce ourselves properly. When the channel opened, Rivera stood at attention, every inch the professional military officer. But there was something in his eyes that would have been recognizable to any human. The cold determination of someone who had decided that the enemy needed to be stopped, regardless of the cost. General Thokmar, Rivera began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. This is Admiral Marcus Rivera of the United Earth Space Command. You are hereby ordered to withdraw from Zephyrian space immediately and Cease all hostilities against peaceful coalition worlds. Thokmar's roar of laughter was audible across the channel. Earth, the quarantined death world? You are far from home, little death worlders. Your reputation for violence means nothing here. Surrender now and perhaps I will allow some of you to serve in my slave pits. Rivera's expression didn't change. General, you have 5 minutes to begin your withdrawal. After that, we will consider you to be hostile forces in violation of interstellar law. Interstellar law? Thokmar's laughter grew louder. The only law is strength, and I have 200 ships to your pathetic 60. You have 200 ships, Rivera agreed calmly. But General, you've made one critical error in your assessment. And what is that, Deathworlder? Rivera's smile was cold as winter. You're assuming this is going to be a fair fight. The transmission ended, and Rivera immediately turned to his tactical officer. Signal all ships. Execute Battle Plan Omega. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The human fleet didn't charge forward in a heroic frontal assault like the stories of ancient heroes. They didn't attempt to match the Krall's superior numbers with superior technology. Instead, they did something that no peaceful species would ever have considered, and that the Krall's straightforward military doctrine had never prepared them for. They cheated. The first indication that something was wrong came when Krall sensors detected massive energy signatures from the outer system. But they weren't coming from the human ships, they were coming from the asteroids and debris scattered throughout the system. What are those readings? Thokmar demanded from his command center. His tactical officer's face showed confusion. Sir, it appears the Deathworlders have somehow weaponized the system's asteroid field. They're using the rocks as missile platforms. Before Thokmar could respond, the first wave of improvised kinetic weapons began hammering his outer patrol groups. Asteroids, accelerated to tremendous velocities by human-installed thruster packages, slammed into Krall vessels with the force of nuclear weapons. The attacks came from multiple vectors, making them nearly impossible to defend against. But that was just the beginning. Sir, called another officer, we're detecting massive electromagnetic interference. Our communications with the outer groups are being jammed. The humans had spent the last hour of their approach to the system doing something no Krall commander would have thought of. They had been deploying stealth communication satellites and sensor jammers throughout the battle space. Now, as the battle began, they had effectively isolated the various Krall formations from each other. This is impossible, Thokmar roared. How can they coordinate attacks from so many positions simultaneously? The answer would have horrified him. The human fleet was operating using distributed command protocols developed over centuries of naval warfare. Each ship's captain was trained to operate independently while maintaining overall strategic coordination. They didn't need constant communication with high command because every officer understood the overall battle plan and could adapt their tactics in real time. Captain Vasquez, leading a squadron of destroyers, exemplified this principle. When her formation encountered a group of Krall cruisers, she didn't wait for orders from Admiral Rivera. Instead, she implemented a classic Earth naval tactic. She split her force. Half her ships engaged the Krall vessels head-on, drawing their attention and fire. Meanwhile, the other half looped around the system's primary star, using its gravity well to accelerate to tremendous velocities before striking the Krall formation from behind. The Krall, trained to fight honorable battles of strength against strength, were completely unprepared for such tactics. Their ships were powerful but inflexible, designed for straight-line assaults rather than the complex three-dimensional maneuvering that humans considered standard procedure. They fight like cowards, Thokmar snarled as he watched his carefully organized battle lines dissolve into chaos. They refused to engage in honorable combat. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Graktor, shook his massive head. General, honor is meaningless if we lose. These Deathworlders fight to win, not to prove their courage. Meanwhile, Admiral Rivera was orchestrating the battle from the determination with the calm precision of someone playing three-dimensional chess. The human fleet was outnumbered more than 3-1, but numbers meant little when the enemy couldn't coordinate their forces effectively. Status report, Rivera requested. We've eliminated their outer patrol groups, reported Commander Park. The main fleet is still intact, but they've lost approximately 30% of their supporting vessels. More importantly, they've lost all strategic mobility. Their formations are trapped in predictable orbits around the planet. Rivera nodded. The Kraul were powerful, but they were also predictable. They fought the same way they had conquered 17 other systems, with overwhelming force applied directly. They had never faced an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Signal the Zephyrian fleet, Rivera ordered. Tell them to prepare for the final phase. As the battle entered its concluding stage, something remarkable happened. The surviving Zephyrian vessels, inspired by the human example and finally understanding what warfare could be, began to coordinate their own attacks. They couldn't match human tactical flexibility, but they could provide sensor data and targeting information that allowed the Earth fleet to strike with devastating precision. General Thakmar, watching his fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to fight properly, finally understood what he was facing. These weren't just another peaceful species with slightly better weapons. These were predators from a world that had taught them that survival meant adaptation, that victory required intelligence as much as strength. Signal retreat, he ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. Sir? Graktor stared at his commander in shock. The Kraul had never retreated from battle before. Signal retreat, Thakmar roared. These Deathworlders, they are not like the others. They do not fight to defend, they fight to destroy. If we remain, they will annihilate us completely. As the battered Kraul fleet began its withdrawal from the Zephyr system, Admiral Rivera stood on the bridge of the Determination, watching the enemy vessels disappear into FTL travel. The victory was complete, but he felt no joy in it. War was never something to celebrate, only something that was sometimes necessary. Admiral, Captain Vasquez approached him quietly. We're receiving transmissions from across the coalition. Word of the victory is spreading. They're calling us heroes. Rivera shook his head. We're not heroes, Captain. We're just humans doing what humans do. Adapting to survive and protecting those who can't protect themselves. On the main screen, Zarathi's image appeared once again. But now, instead of despair, her crystalline features showed something the Zephyrians had never experienced before. Hope mixed with awe. Admiral Rivera, she said softly, on behalf of the entire Galactic Coalition of Peaceful Worlds, I thank you. You have saved not just our species but our way of life. Rivera inclined his head respectfully. Ambassador, humanity is honored to have been of service, but I should warn you, the Kraul will be back. This was just one fleet, one general. The Empire itself remains intact. Zarathi's expression grew determined. Then we must be prepared. Admiral, would Earth consider a formal alliance with the Coalition? We have much to offer each other. Rivera smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, there was warmth in his expression. Ambassador, I believe that would be very much in humanity's interest. We've learned that the galaxy is far more dangerous than we imagined, but we've also learned that it's full of people worth fighting for. As the human fleet prepared for the long journey home, carrying with them the beginning of humanity's first interstellar alliance, Admiral Rivera reflected on what they had accomplished. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human before them, fought humanity's first battle among the stars, and proven that sometimes the universe's most peaceful creatures needed protectors who understood that peace was worth fighting for. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of humanity's isolation was over, and the age of Earth's place among the stars had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, other hostile forces were learning a new truth. The Deathworlders were no longer confined to their home system. Earth had answered the call, and the universe had taken notice.